Sometimes one moment changes everything. For me, it was walking into advanced art class on my first day at Riverside High and seeing him paint stained fingers, creating something beautiful while everyone else was still figuring out where to sit. I had no idea that the quiet boy with messy brown hair and wire-rimmed glasses would become the person who taught me what it meant to be brave enough to love someone completely. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, from the day I thought my world was ending but was actually just beginning. Moving to Portland in my senior year felt like starting a painting halfway through. All the important foundation work had already been done by someone else. My dad's job transfer meant leaving everything familiar behind. My friends, my old art teacher who actually understood my work, the coffee shop where I'd spent countless hours sketching, and Jake, the boy I'd been quietly crushing on for 2 years but never had the courage to tell. "You'll love it here," Mom had said as we drove through neighborhoods of craftsman houses and tree-lined streets. Portland has such an amazing art scene. This could be exactly what you need. But I wasn't convinced. At 17, starting over felt impossible. I'd spent years building up a life in Phoenix, finding my place in the art department, earning the respect of teachers who'd watched me grow from someone who could barely draw stick figures to someone whose work hung in the school gallery. Now I was back to being nobody, just another new kid trying to find his place. Riverside High was bigger than my old school, with hallways that seemed to stretch forever and the overwhelming energy of a place where everyone already knew their social hierarchies, their favorite teachers, their secret spots to hang out between classes. I clutched my schedule like a lifeline, searching for room 204, Advanced Studio Art. The art wing smelled like turpentine and possibility, with student work covering every available wall space. Paint-splattered floors told stories of countless creative explosions, and the late morning light streaming through tall windows made everything look like it was part of an impressionist painting. When I finally found room 204, most students were already settled at easels scattered around a space that looked more like a professional studio than classroom. Canvases in various stages of completion lined the walls. Some realistic portraits that looked like photographs, others abstract explosions of color and emotion and everything in between. "You must be Marcus," said Ms. Chun, the art teacher, approaching with a warm smile and hands that were permanently stained with paint. "Welcome to our little creative chaos. I've heard wonderful things about your work from your previous teacher. There's an open easel right over there." She gestured toward the back corner, where someone was already deep in concentration, mixing colors on a palette with the kind of focus I recognized in fellow artists. As I got closer, carrying my box supplies, I could see he was working on a portrait. Not a traditional one, but something that captured emotion through color and movement rather than perfect realism. The painting was incredible. Layers of blues and greens that seemed to move like water, with touches of gold that caught the light and made the whole piece shimmer. But it wasn't just technically impressive. There was something deeply emotional about it, like the artist had poured his soul onto the canvas. "Hey," he said without looking up, his voice soft and slightly nervous. "You can set up right there." "I'm Alex." "Marcus," I replied, trying not to stare at his work, while I set up my easel. "That painting is amazing." When he finally looked up, I felt something shift inside me. Alex had these expressive hazel eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. And when he smiled, it was genuine and a little shy, like he wasn't used to compliments about his art. "Thanks," he said, a slight blush coloring his cheeks. "I've been working on it for weeks. Can't seem to get the expression right." I studied the painting more carefully. The face in the portrait was androgynous and beautiful, with eyes that seemed to hold secrets and a mouth that looked like it was about to speak or maybe about to kiss someone. "What expression are you going for?" "Hope, I guess," Alex said, then immediately looked embarrassed. "That probably sounds stupid." "No, it doesn't," I said firmly. "Hope is one of the hardest emotions to paint. But I think you're close. There's something in the eyes already." Alex looked at me with surprise, like he hadn't expected such a specific response. "You really think so?" "Definitely. Maybe try softening the shadows around the mouth. Sometimes hope looks almost like a smile that hasn't happened yet." He tilted his head, considering this, then picked up his brush and made a small adjustment. The change was subtle but transformative. Suddenly the face in the painting looked exactly like someone on the verge of something wonderful. That's it, Alex breathed. That's exactly what I was trying to capture. First day, he asked, setting down his brush and giving me his full attention. First day, first week, first everything, I said, pulling out my supplies and trying to arrange them the way I liked. We just moved here from Phoenix. Desert to rainforest. Alex said with a laugh that made my stomach do a small flip. That's quite a change. What made your family choose Portland? As I explained my dad's job transfer and my mom's enthusiasm for Portland's art scene, I found myself relaxing for the first time since we'd arrived in Oregon. Alex listened like he was actually interested, asking questions about Arizona and what I thought of Portland so far. His attention was complete and focused, like I was the only person in the room worth talking to. Have you been to any galleries yet? He asked. Not yet. Still figuring out where everything is. You should check out the Portland Art Museum. They have this amazing collection of Native American art, and their contemporary stuff is incredible. There's also this smaller gallery called Compound that shows work by local artists. Some of it is mind-blowing. I found myself wanting to ask if he'd show me around, but before I could work up the courage, Ms. Chin called the class to attention. Today we're starting a new project, she announced, moving to the center of the room where everyone could see her. I want you to work in pairs to create complementary pieces, not matching, but art that speaks to each other, that creates a dialogue when displayed together. Choose your partner wisely, because you'll be working together for the next 6 weeks. My heart sank. I didn't know anyone except Alex, and he probably already had a regular partner. I started mentally preparing to ask Ms. Chan if I could work alone, when Alex turned to me. Want to be partners? He asked, and there was something almost shy in the way he said it. I promise I'm better at art than I am at first impressions. I don't know, I said, pretending to consider it seriously while internally celebrating. That portrait you're working on suggests you're pretty good at both. The rest of class flew by as Alex and I brainstormed ideas for our complementary pieces. He had this way of building on every suggestion I made, turning my half-formed thoughts into something bigger and better. When I mentioned that I'd been thinking about the concept of displacement, how moving somewhere new made you question everything about yourself, he immediately understood and started sketching ideas that explored the flip side, the possibility of reinvention. What if your piece is about loss and longing, he said, his pencil moving quickly across paper. And mine is about possibility and becoming, like before and after? More like 2 different ways of looking at the same experience. Alex said, moving somewhere new is scary because you're leaving everything behind, but it's also exciting because you get to decide who you want to be. By the end of the period, we decided on a theme, the idea of finding home in unexpected places. I would create something that captured the melancholy of leaving, and Alex would create something that showed the hope of arriving. Perfect for someone who just moved across the country. Alex said as we packed up our supplies. What's your excuse? I asked, genuinely curious about what made him connect so quickly with the theme. He was quiet for a moment, carefully cleaning his brushes with more attention than they probably needed. Sometimes home isn't about geography, he said finally. There was something deeper in his voice, something that suggested layers I hadn't discovered yet. I wanted to ask more questions, to understand what he meant, but the bell rang and students began filing out toward their next classes. Same time tomorrow? Alex asked, slinging his messenger bag over his shoulder. Wouldn't miss it, I replied, and meant it more than I had meant anything in weeks. As I walked to my next class, AP Literature with Mrs. Patterson, I found myself thinking about the way Alex's eyes lit up when he talked about art and how comfortable I'd felt talking with him. It was the first time since moving to Portland that I'd felt like myself, like I might actually find a place here. Maybe moving to Portland wouldn't be so bad after all. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm I actually looked forward to. My other classes were fine. Literature was challenging but interesting. Government was boring but easy, and calculus was slowly killing my will to live. But art class became the highlight of my day, not just because I loved creative work, but because of Alex. Our partnership on the project had evolved into something natural and easy. We understood each other's artistic vision in a way that felt almost telepathic. When I was struggling with how to represent the feeling of loss without being too literal, Alex suggested using empty spaces and negative space to show absence. When he couldn't figure out how to show hope without being cheesy, I recommended focusing on light, the way dawn breaks gradually, promising but not yet fully realized. You know, Alex said one afternoon as we worked side by side, our easels positioned so we could see each other's progress. Your piece is starting to look like home feels. I looked at my canvas, abstract shapes in warm oranges and reds, with deep shadows that seemed to hold memories. It wasn't realistic, but somehow conveyed the emotional weight of leaving everything familiar behind. What does that mean? Safe, he said simply, not looking up from his own work. Like you could rest there, even if you're sad about what you left behind. I glanced at his complimentary piece. Cooler blues and purples that seemed to dance with movement and possibility, shot through with silver threads that caught the light like promises. And yours looks like adventure. Maybe that's what I need, he said quietly. And again I heard that note of something deeper, something he wasn't ready to share yet. As the days passed, I learned more about Alex through our conversations during class and the 15 minutes before the bell rang, when we'd arrived early to set up. He'd lived in Portland his whole life, in the same house in the Hawthorne district with his mom and stepdad. He was an only child who spent most of his free time either painting or reading in his room, surrounded by art books and novels that transported him to places he'd never been. His biological father had left when Alex was 10, and his mom had remarried 2 years later to a man named Dave who was nice enough but didn't really understand Alex's artistic passion. Dave worked in construction and had been hoping Alex would show interest in something more practical, maybe engineering or business. They think art is a nice hobby. Alex told me one day during lunch, which we started eating together in the art room instead of braving the cafeteria. But they don't get that it's not something I do, it's who I am. I understood that feeling completely. In Phoenix, my parents have been supportive of my art, but I could see the worry in their eyes when I talked about wanting to study film or visual arts in college. They wanted me to have a backup plan, something that would guarantee financial security. Here in Portland, with everything feeling new and uncertain, art felt like the only constant in my life. Have you thought about art school? I asked, unwrapping the sandwich my mom had packed. Alex's face lit up in a way I'd never seen before. RISD is my dream school, Rhode Island School of Design. They have this amazing program, and some of my favorite artists went there, but it's expensive and far from home, and your parents aren't thrilled about the idea? My stepdad keeps talking about practical degrees and backup plans, Alex said, using air quotes around the phrases. My mom just wants me to be happy, but she worries about me being so far away. She's never lived anywhere but Portland. What do you want? I asked, though I could see the answer in the way his whole posture changed when he talked about RISD. Alex was quiet for a long moment, pushing the crust of his sandwich around on his napkin. I want to create things that matter. I want to wake up every day excited about what I'm going to make. I want to be somewhere where being different isn't something you have to apologize for. There was something in the way he said that last part that made me pay closer attention. I've been wondering about Alex for weeks now, not just as an artist and friend, but as someone I found myself thinking about more than I probably should. He had this quiet confidence when he painted, his whole body relaxed and focused, but around other people, especially in the hallways or at lunch when other students were around, he seemed to shrink into himself, like he would try to take up as little space as possible. Different how? I asked carefully, trying to keep my voice casual. Alex met my eyes for a moment, and I saw something vulnerable there, something that looked like he was weighing whether to trust me with something important. Then he looked away, back to his sandwich. Just different. I wanted to push, to ask the questions that had been building up in my mind for weeks. Questions about why he never talked about dating anyone, why he seemed so isolated despite being talented and interesting, why he sometimes looked sad even when he was smiling. But something in his expression told me to wait, that pushing now might make him retreat entirely. Instead, I changed the subject to our project, which was nearing completion and turning out better than either of us had expected. We'd been working on the pieces separately, but they were clearly in conversation with each other. My canvas showed the ache of displacement, the way leaving home created empty spaces in your heart. Alex has showed the possibility of filling those spaces with new experiences, new relationships, new versions of yourself. That afternoon in art class, as we put the final touches on our work, Ms. Chun came over to look at what we created. "This is remarkable," she said, studying both canvases with the intense focus she reserved for work that truly impressed her. "They really do speak to each other. Marcus, your piece has a sense of grounding, of honoring what's been lost while making space for healing. And Alex, yours has movement and possibility, like a door opening onto something new. Together, they tell a complete story about growth and transformation." She paused, looking back and forth between the paintings. "Have you both thought about submitting work to the district art show? This kind of collaborative vision is exactly what the judges are looking for." After she moved on to check on other students, Alex turned to me with excitement in his eyes. "She's right, they do tell a story." "What story?" I asked, though I was starting to have my own ideas. "About finding someone who gets you," he said, and for a moment, the air between us felt charged with something unspoken. About discovering that maybe home isn't a place at all. The bell rang before I could respond, but as we packed up our supplies, Alex brushed against my arm while reaching for his brushes. It was barely contact, his forearm against mine for maybe 2 seconds, but it sent electricity through me that I couldn't ignore anymore. I was definitely developing feelings for Alex that went way beyond friendship or artistic collaboration. The question was, did he feel the same way? And more importantly, was I brave enough to find out? That evening, as I worked on homework in my bedroom, I kept thinking about what Alex had said about being different, about finding somewhere he didn't have to apologize for who he was. I thought about the way he looked at me when he said it, like he was testing the waters, seeing if I might understand what he meant. I stared at my reflection in my bedroom mirror. Try to imagine having the conversation I was thinking about having. "Hi, Alex. I've been wondering if you might be gay because I think I might be bi and I've developed a massive crush on you. Seem like a terrible way to approach the subject. But maybe there was another way. Maybe I could find an opportunity to share something about myself first, to show him that he wasn't alone in feeling different, in keeping secrets about who he really was." The idea terrified and excited me in equal measure. I'd never told anyone about the thoughts and feelings I've been having since sophomore year, the way I'd started noticing boys as much as girls, the way I'd felt when Jake Rodriguez had accidentally grabbed my hand instead of my paper during chemistry lab last spring. Maybe it was time to be brave. Spring arrived in Portland with an explosion of cherry blossoms and the kind of rain that felt more like mist, turning the whole city into something soft and dreamlike. Our art project had been completed and displayed in the school's main hallway, where it drew compliments from students and teachers who stopped to study the two pieces side by side. Alex and I had earned an A+. But more than that, we'd created something that felt like a reflection of our friendship, two separate pieces that were somehow better together. The attention our work was receiving seemed to give Alex more confidence. I noticed him walking a little taller in the hallways, speaking up more in class discussions, even joining conversations with other art students that he used to observe from the edges. We should celebrate. I suggested one Friday after school, as we were cleaning up our workspace and preparing to leave for the weekend. Coffee? My treat. Alex looked up from where he was carefully storing his brushes, and for a moment I saw something like nervousness cross his face. "There's this place I go sometimes," he said slowly. "It's kind of hidden away, but they have the best coffee in Portland. And it's..." He paused, seeming to search for words. "It's a safe space." I wasn't sure what he meant by that, but the way he said it made me curious. Sounds perfect. We walked through several neighborhoods I hadn't explored yet, Alex leading us down tree-lined streets where craftsman houses sat behind gardens that were starting to bloom with spring flowers. He seemed to know every shortcut and alley, pointing out murals and interesting architecture as we made our way through parts of the city that felt more artistic and bohemian than the suburban area where my family lived. "Portland's really beautiful," I said as we passed a community garden where people were working in raised beds full of vegetables and flowers. "It is," Alex agreed, "but sometimes I feel like I've seen every corner of it. Like I need to know what else is out there." Finally, he led me down a side street to a small cafe called Common Grounds. The windows were painted with rainbow flags and positive affirmations in beautiful calligraphy, and through the glass, I could see a diverse crowd of people chatting, reading, working on laptops, and playing board games. The atmosphere looked warm and welcoming in a way that was different from the chain coffee shops I was used to. "This is cool," I said as we walked in, immediately struck by how comfortable everyone seemed, how the conversations and laughter felt genuine and unguarded. "Yeah," Alex replied, and I noticed he seemed more relaxed here than he did at school, his shoulders less tense, his smile more natural. "I started coming here when I was 15. It's one of the few places where I can just be myself." We ordered our drinks. I got a latte, Alex got something called a honey cardamom cappuccino, and found a corner table surrounded by local artwork and community bulletin boards covered with flyers for LGBTQ+ events, art shows, poetry readings, and support groups. As we settled in with our coffee, I began to understand what Alex meant about it being a safe space. Most of the customers were young, many of them clearly artists or students, and there was something about the energy that felt different from other places we'd been. People seemed more open, more willing to be themselves without worrying about judgment. I saw couples of all different combinations holding hands, people with colorful hair and unique fashion choices, conversations that looked deep and meaningful rather than superficial. "So," I said, wrapping my hand around my warm mug and trying to work up the courage for conversation I'd been planning, "is this where you come to think about RSD?" Alex smiled, stirring honey into his cappuccino. "Among other things, I actually applied already." "Really? That's amazing. When you find out." "Next month," he said, but his expression was complicated. Excited, but also worried. "I haven't told my parents yet. I used my savings for the application fee and got my portfolio together without them knowing." "They'll be proud of you," I said, though I could see why he might be nervous about their reaction. Maybe they'll think I'm running away from home to chase an impossible dream." I studied his face, noticing how he seemed to be wrestling with something bigger than college applications. Around us, the cafe hummed with conversation and the gentle sound of indie folk music, creating a cocoon of warmth and acceptance that felt separate from the rest of the world. "Alex," I said, deciding this was a moment to be brave, "can I ask you something?" He nodded, though I saw him tense up slightly, like he was preparing for a difficult conversation. "That day in art class, when you said sometimes home isn't about geography, and just now when you talk about being different, what did you mean?" Alex was quiet for a long time, staring into his coffee like it might have answers written in the foam. I watched emotions play across his face: fear, longing, hope, uncertainty. Around us, other conversation continued, but our corner felt suspended in time. "I meant," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper, "that sometimes you don't feel home in your own life, like you're playing a part that doesn't quite fit, saying lines that aren't really yours." "What part?" I asked gently, though I thought I might already know. Alex looked up at me then, and I saw something vulnerable and brave in his eyes, like he was standing at the edge of a cliff deciding whether to jump. "The part where I pretend I'm interested in girls when anyone asks. The part where I don't mention that I've been figuring out I'm gay since I was 14. The part where I act like it doesn't matter, that I've never felt like I could tell anyone, not even my mom." The words hung between us, honest and raw and beautiful in their simplicity. I felt my heart speed up, not from shock, but from recognition and relief, and something that felt like doors opening inside me. "Thank you," I said, "for trusting me with that." "Are you okay with it?" he asked quietly, and I could hear years of fear and isolation in the question. "More than okay," I replied, reaching across the table to touch his hand. "Actually, I should probably tell you something too." Alex raised his eyebrows, waiting, and I saw hope beginning to bloom in his expression. "I'm bi," I said, the words feeling strange and liberating in my mouth. "I figured out a couple years ago, but I've never really talked about it with anyone. In Phoenix, I didn't feel like I could be open about it. My friends they weren't exactly the most understanding about that kind of thing." "And now?" Alex asked, turning his hand over so our palms were touching. I looked around the cafe, with its rainbow flags and atmosphere of acceptance, then back at Alex's hopeful face. Now I think I'm ready to stop pretending too. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both of us processing what we just shared. The weight of secrets we've been carrying alone was lifting, replaced by something lighter and more hopeful. Alex's fingers intertwined with mine, and I felt a sense of rightness that I'd never experienced before. "So," he said, a smile spreading across his face. Really smile, genuine and unguarded in a way I'd never seen before. "What do we do now?" "Now," I said, feeling braver than I had in months. "We figure out what this means. For us." "I've been wanting to hold your hand for weeks," Alex admitted, giving my fingers a gentle squeeze. "Just that?" I asked, my heart racing with possibility. "Well," Alex said, his cheeks coloring slightly, "maybe a few other things too." We both laughed, and the sound felt like music, like celebration, like the beginning of something I've been waiting my whole life to find. Around us, the cafe continued its gentle hum of acceptance and community, but our corner felt like the center of the universe. "I have an idea," Alex said after we'd finished our coffee and were reluctant to leave this perfect bubble we'd created. "Want to see some of my favorite places in the city? The real Portland, not just the touristy stuff." "Lead the way," I said, as we left Common Ground that evening, walking slowly through the misty Portland streets with our hands linked. I couldn't help but think that sometimes the best things happen when you're brave enough to show someone your true colors. Alex showed me hidden murals tucked into alleyways, a tiny bookstore that specialized in poetry and graphic novels, and a bridge covered in thousands of locks left by couples who wanted to make their love permanent. We talked about everything, our families, our dreams, our fears, the way it felt to finally tell someone the truth about who we were. "I was so scared," Alex confided as we stood on the bridge, looking out over the river. "Not just about telling you I was gay, but about telling anyone. I kept thinking, what if they can't handle it? What if they stop seeing me as just Alex and start seeing me as gay Alex? Like that becomes the most important thing about me. Is that how it feels now?" I asked. "Different." Alex considered this, leaning against the bridge railing. "Actually, no. It feels more like myself than I've felt in years. Like I can finally stop using so much energy to hide." "Good," I said, moving closer to him, "because I like the real you. All of you." When Alex turned to look at me, something passed between us that was deeper than friendship, deeper than attraction. It was recognition. The feeling of finding someone who truly understood you. "Marcus," he said softly. "Yeah, I think I'm falling for you." Instead of answering with words, I leaned in and kissed him. It was soft and tentative at first, both of us uncertain, then deeper as we realized this was what we'd both been hoping for. When we broke apart, Alex was smiling. "I'll take that as mutual," he said. "Definitely mutual," I confirmed as we walked back toward my neighborhood, taking a long way and talking about everything we'd kept hidden until now. I felt like I was seeing Portland and myself clearly for the first time. The city looked different when you weren't afraid anymore, more colorful and full of possibility. "What happens on Monday?" I asked as we reached my street. "At school, I mean." Alex thought about this. "I don't know if I'm ready to be out to everyone yet, but I'm ready to stop pretending I don't care about you. We can take it slow," I said. "Figure out together." "Together?" Alex repeated, like he was testing how the word felt. I liked the sound of that. That night, I lay in bed replaying every moment of the evening, from Alex's nervous confession to our first kiss on the bridge. I thought about how much courage it had taken for him to trust me with his truth, and how right it had felt to share mine in return. For the first time since moving to Portland, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The weeks that followed felt like living in a painting where all the colors had been intensified. Alex and I fell into the rhythm of being together in a way that felt both thrilling and completely natural. We were careful at school, not ready to deal with other people's reactions or questions, but we found ways to be close. Studying in the library with our feet touching under the table, sharing earbuds during lunch to listen to music that reminded us of each other, staying after art class to work on individual projects that gave us time alone together. "I got in," Alex said one afternoon in early April, pulling an envelope out of his messenger bag with hands that were visibly shaking. We were sitting at our usual table in Common Grounds, surrounded by the comfortable buzz of conversation, and the smell of coffee and pastries. The late afternoon light was streaming through the windows, making everything look golden and possible. RSD? I asked, though his expression already told me the answer. He nodded, and I let out a whoop that made everyone in the cafe turn to look at us. Several people smiled when they saw Alex's face, clearly recognizing the look of someone who just received life-changing news. "Alex, that's incredible," I said, reaching across the table to grab his hands. "Tell me everything." "Full scholarship," he said, still looking stunned, like he couldn't quite believe it was real. "They like my portfolio so much they're offering me a full ride, plus a stipend for art supplies." "You're going to Rhode Island," I said, the reality of it hitting me even as I felt overwhelmed with pride for him. "You're going to study art at one of the best schools in the country. You're going to be amazing." "I'm terrified," he admitted, looking down at the letter he was still holding. "Good," I said firmly. "That means it matters. That means you care enough to be scared." Alex looked up at me then, and I saw all the emotions playing across his face: excitement, fear, gratitude, and something that looked like sadness. "What about us?" he asked quietly. It was the question I'd been trying not to think about. Rhode Island was 3,000 miles away. Alex would be starting his freshman year, while I finished high school. The logistics of maintaining a relationship across that distance felt overwhelming. "We'll figure it out," I said, though I wasn't sure how. "I care about you too much to let distance be the end of this." "Really?" Alex asked, and I heard years of abandonment fears in that single word. "Really," I said. "Besides, you're not leaving until August. That's 4 months to make sure this is something worth fighting for." Alex smiled then, the real smile I'd grown to love, the one that made his whole face light up. "I already know it's worth fighting for." As spring turned toward summer, we spent more and more time together outside of school. Alex showed me hidden gems throughout Portland. Secret hiking trails that led to waterfalls, food carts that served the best Thai food I'd ever tasted, bookstores tucked into basements where we could spend hours getting lost among the stacks. One Saturday in May, we packed a picnic and drove out to Multnomah Falls. The tourist areas were crowded with families and tour groups, but Alex led me to a smaller trail that wound through old-growth forest to a quieter viewpoint above the main falls. "How did you find this place?" I asked as we settled on a fallen log that had been worn smooth by countless other visitors, overlooking the valley that stretched out green and endless below us. "I used to come here when things at home got complicated," Alex said, unpacking the sandwiches and fruit we brought. "It helped me remember that there was a bigger world out there, that Portland wasn't the whole universe, even though it sometimes felt like it." We ate in comfortable silence, watching clouds move across the landscape and listening to the distant sound of water falling over stone. I found myself memorizing everything about the moment: the way Alex's hair looked in the dappled sunlight, the sound of his laugh when I told him about my disastrous attempt to make coffee that morning, the feeling of being completely content with exactly where I was. "Marcus," Alex said suddenly, his voice more serious than it had been all day. "Yeah." "What happens in the fall?" he asked, turning to face me fully. "I mean, I know we said we'd figure out, but have you actually thought about the logistics? You'll be starting your senior year, dealing with college applications, and I'll be 3,000 miles away trying to navigate my first semester of art school." I had thought about it, probably more than was healthy. I'd lain awake at night trying to figure out how to make it work, researching everything from Skype dates to care package ideas to flight schedules between Portland and Providence. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I know I care about you too much to pretend it doesn't matter." Alex reached for my hand, intertwining our fingers in a gesture that had become natural and comforting. "I care about you too, more than I thought was possible. We'll make it work," I said, trying to project more confidence than I felt. "People do long-distance relationships all the time." "Do they?" Alex asked. "Do 17-year-olds who've been together for 3 months really make it work when one of them moves across the country?" The question hung between us, honest and painful. I wanted to say yes, of course they do. Love conquers all. But I also knew that Alex deserved honesty, not false reassurance. "I don't know," I said again, "but I want to try. Don't you?" Instead of answering immediately, Alex leaned over and kissed me. It was different from our other kisses. Deeper, more urgent, like he was trying to memorize a feeling. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "Yes," he said firmly. "I want to try." "Promise?" I asked. "Promise," he said, then kissed me again. As we packed up our picnic later that afternoon, I caught Alex sketching the margins of his notebook. Not the landscape, but me, captured in quick, sure lines that somehow showed everything he saw when he looked at me. The drawing showed me laughing at something he'd said, my head tilted back, completely unself-conscious and happy. "Can I keep that?" I asked. "Only if you promise to remember this day," he said, tearing out the page carefully. How could I forget? That night, I lay in bed staring at Alex's sketch, thinking about how much my life had changed since moving to Portland. I'd expected to spend senior year feeling displaced and counting down the days until I could leave for college somewhere far away. Instead, I'd found something I hadn't even known I was looking for, not just Alex, but a sense of who I was when I stopped trying to be what other people expected. The drawing captured that somehow, not just my physical features, but the way I looked when I felt completely myself, completely seen and accepted by another person. It was the best portrait anyone had ever made of me, because it was drawn by someone who really saw me. I tucked the sketch into my journal, next to college brochures and scholarship applications that suddenly seemed more important than ever. If Alex could be brave enough to chase his dreams across the country, maybe I could be brave enough to chase mine too. Summer arrived with long, golden days that felt both infinite and precious, like we were living inside a snow globe that someone might shake at any moment. Alex had told his parents about RISD, and after the initial shock and several long conversations that I could hear through his bedroom wall, when I came over, they'd come around to being proud and supportive, if still worried about the practical aspects. Mom cried. Alex told me one evening as we sat in his backyard, watching the sunset behind the neighbor's cherry tree. But then she said she'd always known I was meant for bigger things in Portland. And Dave? He's trying. He asked me yesterday if I needed help building a portfolio case for shipping my artwork, and he's been researching flights to Providence so they can visit. My own parents had met Alex several times now, first at a school art show where our collaborative piece was displayed, then for dinner at our house, and most recently when he joined us for a barbecue where my dad had spent an hour asking him about his technique for mixing colors. They clearly adored him, though I wasn't sure they'd figured out the exact nature of our relationship yet. "He's good for you," Mom said one evening after Alex had gone home, as I helped her load the dishwasher. "You light up when he's around." "Is it that obvious?" I asked, wondering if we were being as subtle as we thought we were. "Only to someone who loves you," she replied with a knowing smile that made me wonder exactly how much she'd figured out. Alex and I spent most of June and July inseparable, exploring Portland and the surrounding areas like we were trying to store up enough memories to last through our separation. We visited every art museum within driving distance, attended outdoor concerts in park amphitheaters, spent entire days at Powell's Books getting lost among the stacks, and hiked trails that led to hidden swimming holes where we could be alone together. One afternoon in late July, as we floated on inner tubes in the Sandy River, Alex brought up something that had been on both our minds, but neither of us had wanted to discuss. "I've been thinking about what happens when I leave," he said, trailing his fingers in the cool water. "About us, I mean." "Yeah," I said, trying to keep my voice casual even though my stomach clenched. "I want to make this work, Marcus. I really do. But I also don't want to hold you back from enjoying your senior year, from dating other people if you meet someone you connect with." I turned my tube so I could face him directly. "Is that what you want? For us to see other people?" "No," Alex said immediately. "God, no. But I want to be realistic about what we're asking of each other. You're going to be here, surrounded by people, having experiences, and I'm going to be in Rhode Island trying to figure out how to survive art school." "Alex," I said, reaching across the space between our tubes to take his hand. "I don't want to see other people. I want to figure out how to make this work with you. Even if it's hard?" "Especially if it's hard," I said. "Easy things aren't usually worth having." Alex smiled then, the smile that had become my favorite thing in the world. "When did you become so wise?" "I learned from this guy I know," I said. He's an artist. Very deep, very philosophical. He sounds like a catch. He is. That evening, we drove to the Oregon coast to watch the sunset from Cannon Beach. The drive took 2 hours, but neither of us minded. We had nowhere else we needed to be, and the conversation flowed as easily as it always did between us. We talked about everything. Our hopes for the future, our fears about the distance, favorite memories from the summer, dreams we'd never share with anyone else. "I've been working on something," Alex said as we walked along the beach, our shoes tied together and slung over our shoulders, sand cool between our toes. "A painting. For you. For me? For your birthday next month. But also just because I wanted to create something that captured how this summer has felt. Can I see it?" "Not until it's finished," Alex said, "but I think you'll like it. It's different from anything I've done before." We found a piece of driftwood large enough for both of us to sit on and watch the sun sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in colors that seemed too beautiful to be real. Other couples and families were scattered along the beach, but in the vastness of the ocean and sand, we felt completely alone. "I love you," Alex said suddenly, quietly, like he was sharing a secret with the waves. We'd said it to each other before, but somehow this time felt different, more weighted with meaning. Maybe because we both knew our time together was running short, or maybe because the setting was so beautiful it demanded honesty. "I love you too," I replied, and meant it with every part of myself. As the sun disappeared into the ocean and the first stars began to appear, Alex pulled out his sketchbook and started drawing. Not the sunset or the waves, but me, sitting beside him with my face turned toward the ocean. I watched his pencil move across the paper with sure, confident strokes, capturing not just what I looked like, but something deeper. "What are you drawing?" I asked. "The way you look when you're thinking about forever," he said without looking up from his work. When he finished and showed me the sketch, I understood what he meant. He'd drawn me in profile, but there was something in the expression, peaceful but also yearning, that captured exactly how I felt when I was with him. Like I could see my whole future stretching out ahead of me, and it was beautiful. "That's how I feel right now," I said. "Good," Alex said, closing the sketchbook and moving closer to me on the driftwood. "Because forever is what I want with you, even if we have to figure out how to make it work from 3,000 miles apart." August arrived too quickly, bringing with the reality of Alex's departure, like a storm cloud on an otherwise perfect horizon. His dorm room was reserved, his supplies purchased, his flight booked for the last Sunday of the month. We tried not to talk about it, focusing instead on making the most of the time we had left, but the approaching separation colored everything with bittersweetness. "I have something for you," Alex said on the Saturday before his last week in Portland. We were in his bedroom, surrounded by half-packed boxes and the evidence of a life being carefully dismantled and prepared for transport. His walls looked strange with most of his artwork taken down, leaving only the faint outlines where frames had protected the paint from fading. He pulled a wrapped canvas from his closet, about the size of a large book, and handed it to me with the kind of nervous energy I recognized from the day he'd first told me he was gay. "Alex, you didn't have to." "I wanted to," he interrupted. "Open it." Inside the wrapping was a painting I'd never seen before, a portrait of the two of us sitting at our easels in art class, working on our complementary pieces from that first project. But it wasn't realistic. Instead, Alex had painted us in his signature style, with colors that seemed to move and dance around our figures. The background showed the art room, but transformed. The windows opened onto impossible landscapes, and the light that fell across our work surfaces seemed to come from multiple sources, creating an atmosphere that was dreamlike and magical. But the most beautiful part was how he'd painted us. We were separate, focused on our individual canvases, but clearly connected by invisible threads of understanding and affection. Our postures mirrored each other, and the colors from our paintings seemed to flow between the easels, creating a bridge of shared creativity. "When did you paint this?" I asked, studying every brushstroke with amazement. "I started it the day we became partners," Alex said, sitting beside me on his bed. "I added to it over the months as things between us developed. The final layer was last week." "It's perfect," I said, and I meant it. The painting captured not just what we looked like, but who we were together. Two artists finding each other, creating something beautiful both individually and as a team. It's us. Keep it, he said. And when you look at it, remember that some connections don't break just because of distance. What we have, what we built together, that's not dependent on geography. Alex, I started, but he shook his head. I need to say this, he said. These past few months with you have been the best of my life. Not just because I fell in love with you, but because being with you helped me fall in love with myself. You made me brave enough to apply to RSD, to tell my parents who I really am, to stop apologizing for taking up space in the world. I felt tears starting to build behind my eyes. You did the same for me. Promise me something, Alex said, taking my hand in his paint-stained fingers. Anything. Promise me you won't wait for me if it gets too hard. If the distance becomes too much. If you meet someone who can give you what you need in a way I can't from 3,000 miles away. Don't sacrifice your happiness for some idea of what we might have been. Alex, I'm serious, Marcus. I love you enough to want you to be happy, even if it's not with me. And what if I don't want to be happy without you? I asked. Alex smiled through his own tears. Then we'll figure out how to make it work. Together. The next morning, I helped Alex and his parents load the rental car that would take them to the airport. We'd said our real goodbyes the night before, sitting on his front porch until well past midnight, talking about everything and nothing, holding hands and trying to memorize the feeling of being together. At the airport, his mom hugged him tightly, making him promise to call every week and eat vegetables and not spend all his money on art supplies. Dave shook his hand and told him how proud he was, how excited he was to see what Alex would create at school. When it was my turn to say goodbye, Alex and I stepped slightly away from his parents, though not so far that we'd raise questions about the nature of our relationship. This isn't goodbye, I said firmly, fighting to keep my voice steady. No, Alex agreed. This is see you soon. I'll call you tonight when you land. I'll be waiting. He hugged me then, the kind of hug that friends give each other, but his hand lingered on my back a moment longer than necessary, and I felt him press something small into my palm. Don't look at it until you get home, he whispered. Then he grabbed his carry-on and headed toward the security line. I watched until he disappeared from view, feeling like part of me was boarding that plane with him. In the car on the way home, I kept my hand clenched around whatever Alex had given me, afraid to look. It wasn't until I was alone in my bedroom that I finally opened my fingers. It was a small piece of paper, folded multiple times. Inside, in Alex's careful handwriting, was a quote I recognized from one of the poetry books we'd read together over the summer. Distance means nothing when someone means everything. Below that, he'd written, I choose you, Marcus. Every day, from every mile away. Love, A. I pressed the note against my chest and let myself cry for the first time since we'd started the countdown to his departure. But even through the tears, I felt something that surprised me. Hope. Alex was right. Some connections don't break because of distance. What we had built together was stronger than geography, deeper than convenience. We had work to do to make this relationship survive the separation. But for the first time, I truly believed we could do it. 3 months later, November. Tell me again about your new piece, I said into my phone, curled up in my bed with Alex's painting propped against my pillows where I could see it while we talked. It was Sunday evening, which had become our designated long conversation time. Alex called me every Sunday at 7 p.m. Portland time, 10 p.m. his time, and we talked until one of us was too exhausted to keep our eyes open. These calls had become the highlight of my week. It's a series, Alex said, and I could hear the excitement in his voice that always appeared when he talked about his work. 5 paintings that explore the concept of emotional geography, how the places that matter to us exist as much in memory and feeling as they do in physical space. That sounds incredible, I said, genuinely amazed by how much his artistic vision had expanded since starting at RSD. What places are you painting? Well, one is definitely common grounds, Alex said with a laugh. But not how it actually looks, how it feels. All warm colors and soft edges, with light that seems to come from everywhere at once. And the others? The art room at Riverside, Multnomah Falls, the bridge where we had our first kiss. And he paused, suddenly shy. And what? Your bedroom. The way it looked that last night before I left. With your sketches tacked up all over the walls, and the way the lamp made everything feel golden and safe. I felt my chest tighten with longing. I miss you, I said, though I tried not to say it too often during our calls. I didn't want to make him feel guilty for being where he needed to be. I miss you too, Alex said softly. Every day. But Marcus, I have to tell you something. I'm so glad I'm here. This program is everything I hoped it would be and more. My professors are incredible, and I'm learning techniques I never even knew existed. I'm proud of you, I said, and meant it completely despite the ache in my chest. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. What about you? How are college applications coming? This was a conversation I'd been avoiding for weeks. Actually, I said, taking a deep breath, I have news. Good news or bad news? Good news, I think. I hope. I sat up straighter, looking at the acceptance letter that had arrived 3 days earlier and that I'd been too nervous to tell Alex about. I got into Emerson. Emerson? Alex's voice went up an octave. In Boston? Full scholarship for their visual and media arts program. I'd be studying documentary filmmaking. There was silence on the other end of the line, and for a moment I worried the call had dropped. Alex, are you there? I'm here, he said, and his voice sounded strange. Boston is 4 hours from Providence. I finished. I know. Marcus, are you serious? You applied to schools near me? I applied to schools that had good programs, I said carefully. The fact that some of them happen to be in your general area is just a bonus. A bonus? Alex laughed, and I could hear joy and disbelief mixing in his voice. Marcus, this is incredible. We could see each other on weekends. We could explore New England together. We could... Alex, I interrupted gently. I haven't said yes yet. What do you mean? I've been dreading this conversation. But I knew I needed to be honest with him about my concerns. I mean, what if I'm making this decision for the wrong reasons? What if I choose Emerson because I want to be near you, and then things don't work out between us? And I'm stuck across the country from my family because of a relationship that ended. Alex was quiet for a long moment. What does your gut tell you? He asked finally. My gut? About Emerson. Forget about me for a minute. Is it a good program? Do you think you'd be happy there? I thought about the research I'd done, the professors I'd read about, the documentary films that had come out of their program. It's one of the best programs in the country for what I want to do, I admitted. And Boston seems like an amazing city for artists. Lots of museums, film festivals, creative communities. So you'd be choosing a great school in a great city to study exactly what you want to study, Alex said. The fact that I happen to be a few hours away is just a bonus. I finished, smiling despite my nerves. Exactly. Marcus, you have to choose a path that's right for you, regardless of where I am. But if the path that's right for you happens to bring us closer together, I could hear the hope in his voice. I'm scared, I admitted. Of what? Of wanting this too much. Of building my whole future around the hope that we can make this work. Hey, Alex said, his voice gentle. You're not building your future around me. You're building your future around your own dreams and talents. I just get to be part of it. That night, after we'd hung up, I sat at my desk staring at the Emerson acceptance letter. Alex was right. It was an incredible program, and Boston was exactly the kind of city where I could see myself thriving as a filmmaker. The fact that it would bring me closer to Alex felt like the universe confirming that I was making the right choice. I picked up my phone and started typing a text to Alex. I'm going to accept Emerson's offer. See you in September. But before I could send it, my phone rang. Alex's name appeared on the screen. I couldn't sleep, he said when I answered. I kept thinking about our conversation. Yeah, I need you to know that whatever you decide, I support you completely. If you choose a school in California, because it's closer to your family, I'll figure out how to visit. If you choose New York because you want to live in the city, I'll take the train down on weekends. If you choose Boston because you want to be near me, I'll do everything I can to make sure you never regret it. Alex, I'm not done, he said. I also need you to know that these 3 months apart have been the hardest thing I've ever done, but they've also proved something to me. What we have doesn't fade with distance. If anything, it's gotten stronger. I love you more now than I did the day I left Portland. I love you too, I said, tears starting to build in my eyes. So whatever you decide about college, know that I'm in this for the long haul. Whether you're in California or Massachusetts or on the moon, I want to figure out how to build a life with you. After we hung up, I looked at the text I'd written but never sent. Then I deleted it and wrote a new one. I'm choosing Emerson because it's the right choice of my future. The fact that my future gets to include more time with you is the best bonus I could ask for. His response came immediately. I can't wait to show you New England in the fall. It's going to be beautiful. 1 year later, September. I'm writing this from my dorm room at Emerson College in Boston, where I'm starting my sophomore year in the Visual and Media Arts program. My walls are covered with storyboards for the documentary I'm making about young LGBTQ+ artists finding their voices, a project that started as an assignment but has become something much more personal and important. It's been an incredible year of growth, creativity, and discovery. But the best part has been that Alex was right from the beginning. Some connections really don't break because of distance, and when you're brave enough to choose love alongside your dreams, both become more beautiful. I see Alex almost every weekend now. Sometimes I take the train to Providence, and we explore Rhode Island's coast, visiting galleries and hiking trails that remind us of Oregon, but feel distinctly East Coast. Other times he comes to Boston, and we spend days wandering through museums, attending film screenings, and discovering the incredible food scene that makes us both miss Portland's food carts, but appreciate having new adventures to share. You know what's funny? Alex said last weekend, as we sat in a cafe in Cambridge, both of us working on projects, him sketching ideas for his junior portfolio, me editing footage for my documentary. What? A year ago, I was terrified that distance would kill what we had. Now I think it actually made us stronger. I looked up from my laptop and studied his face. He looked different than he had in high school, more confident, more comfortable in his own skin, with a kind of artistic intensity that made him even more beautiful to me. How so? We had to choose each other every day, Alex said, setting down his pencil and giving me his full attention. It wasn't convenient or easy. We had to work at it, be intentional about it. That's not something you take for granted. He was right. The long-distance period of our relationship had taught us how to communicate, how to support each other's individual growth while maintaining our connection, how to be partners even when we couldn't be physically present. Plus, Alex added with a grin, we have the best stories now. Remember the time you fell asleep during our video call, and I stayed on for 3 hours just listening to you breathe? Remember the time you mailed me a care package and forgot to include a return address? So I spent a week thinking my secret admirer was someone from your oil painting class? We both laughed, and I felt the same sense of contentment I'd experienced on that first day at Common Grounds when Alex had told me his truth and I'd found the courage to share mine. My documentary project has been getting attention from professors and local film festivals. It follows 5 young LGBTQ+ artists, including Alex and myself, as we navigate coming of age, coming out, and finding our voices both personally and artistically. The film explores themes of authenticity, community, and the ways that creating art can be both an act of self-discovery and a form of activism. You're telling important stories, my advisor told me after viewing the latest cut, stories that need to be heard. Next month, Alex and I are planning to visit Portland together during fall break. We want to see Ms. Chun, revisit Common Grounds, and show our families how much we've both grown. I'm excited to see the city that brought us together through the eyes of who we've become. I still have Alex's painting hanging above my desk. The portrait of us in art class, working on our complementary pieces. Sometimes I look at it and remember that scared 17-year-old who moved to Portland not knowing anyone or anything about himself. That version of me couldn't have imagined the life I'm living now. Love, it turns out, isn't just about finding someone who accepts who you are. It's about finding someone who helps you become who you're meant to be, who supports your dreams even when they're scary, who chooses to grow alongside you even when it would be easier to grow apart. Alex did that for me, and I hope I've done the same for him. We're both different people than we were when we first met in art class. More confident, more sure of ourselves, more willing to take risks for things we believe in. But when we're together, when we share our work and our dreams and our fears, we're still those same two kids who found each other over paintbrushes and possibility. The best love stories, I've learned, aren't about perfect people finding each other at the perfect time. They're about real people choosing to build something beautiful together, day by day, choice by choice, through all the changes and challenges that life brings. Sometimes I think about that first day in Ms. Chen's art class, when Alex was painting Hope, and I was just trying to find my place. Neither of us knew then that we were starting a story that would change both of our lives, that would teach us what it meant to be brave, to be authentic, to love someone fully while still pursuing our own dreams. The painting we created together that semester, our complementary pieces about finding home in unexpected places, is now hanging in my parent house in Portland. Mom says it reminds her that the most beautiful things happen when people are willing to be vulnerable with each other, to create something together that neither could have made alone. And this story, our story, it's still being written. Every phone call, every weekend visit, every shared dream and supported ambition adds another brushstroke to the canvas of what we're building together. I used to think love meant finding someone who completed you. Now I know it means finding someone who inspires you to complete yourself, while choosing to walk alongside you as you do. Alex is that person for me. And every day, I get to choose him again. Thank you for reading The Art of Falling. Love stories like Marcus and Alex's remind us that the most important connections we make aren't always convenient or easy, but they're always worth fighting for. If this story moved you, or if it reminded you of your own journey toward love and authenticity, I'd love to hear about it. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is share our stories with each other. It helps us all feel a little less alone in the world.